To another Tish Talks Tech. Yes, we are impromptu Tish Talks Tech all week, and we are here at the Share Conference here in Orlando, Florida. And guess who my special guest is?
Me?
It's you,
It's
𝗧𝗶𝗀𝗵.
Oh,
welcome.
Thank you so much.
I am so happy to be here with you.
I'm happy to be here with you.
You know what? I've been coming to Share for some time now.
Okay.
And I just am so pleased. I'm just tickled pink, pleased as punch to see you and to see how wonderful we have just, I mean, this entire conference has just bloomed from the time that I have been here.
Okay.
But we're not here to fangirl you or and you know how I get you or the conference, but I just want to give you my sincerest thanks, because without this conference, people that are enterprise computing technicians, professionals, would not have like a really great place to just kind of hang out and learn together. And Share gets to do that with us, and I'm just so happy. Thank you for facilitating that for us.
Oh, thank you for coming. Right, because without people coming to Share, there's nothing to facilitate. But it's my honor to have been serving Share now as president for a little over a year, and I'm on the board for coming up on 6 years, and as a volunteer for coming up on 25.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm one of the few people who's actually served as an IBM representative, a program representative, a project representative, a board member. I've been kind of all over the industry during my career. So it's been my pleasure to be able to be a part of this for what feels like a really long time.
Yeah.
But when I look back, I mean, I was looking at, I got, because of Facebook, right? You get your memories, right? So this is the week, right? And every week, there's always like 15 or 20 memories of Share. And I've been going to Share that long. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, things have changed, and then lots of things have stayed the same as well. About the conference, right? I mean, the best thing is the people that come, because they are the conference. The fact that IBM comes and does a lot of presentations, a lot of education, people come and listen, the networking, right? The ability for people to go find an expert, or if not find the expert, find an expert who can get them to the expert. The influx of younger people like you has been terrific. It really makes a big difference. Because if it's all us old fogies, right? You know,
don't say that.
who are you gonna be? Who are you gonna be able to share your wisdom with, right?
Right.
Or understand that there are people with a different perspective and a different point of view.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I remember I started coming in the late '90s, so and there are a few that I didn't come to, but pretty much continuously since then. I was a speaker for IBM when I was I wasn't all that young, but certainly not as old as I am now. But and I remember going to my first. They used to call the evening reception skids.
Oh.
Right, SCIDS. And so I'd ask people to look that up online to figure out what it means, because I don't want to get myself into trouble. And I remember, as let's see, so in the late '90s, I would have been in my mid 30s, and walking up on two guys who were probably the age I am now, in their 60s. And they were discussing, how they set things up in their shops.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to them talk, and the sort of the confluence of really good information and really bad information, right? Because they were doing things in the late '90s like they have been doing them in the '60s and the '70s, right? So they had been at it for 30 years from that point. And it was great so I stepped up and I said, hey, I said, so some of that's really interesting, and some of that it just seems a little bit out of date.
Right.
And the guy said, what do you mean out of date? Because they were actually talking about the placement. So this is as esoteric as it gets, right? The placement of data sets on the IPL volume, right? And it was an art to make sure to speed up the IPL, because there were, at that time, right, every disk was humongous, right? And they had a head, and the head had to travel across, right, back and forth to go find information, right? So if you had information all over the IPL volume, which was one physical disk, right, the disk head would have to go back and forth, and it would have to wait for the disk to rotate around, and that would increase the amount of time it would take for information to be read. So they would take the actual the VTOC, which locates the data sets, and put it in the middle in the VTOC index and put it just below the VTOC. And then they would put sys1.nucleus just above the VTOC. And I mean, I'm probably getting some of this wrong, but you know, in sys1.lpa just below that, and sys1.link just above that, so that the disk head would travel a minimum distance in between each read.
Wow.
Which could make the difference of minutes in a machine from the 1960s or 1970s. But IBM and the other storage vendors have come out with the, you know, what they call the large scale storage systems, where it wasn't one big disk per volume. It was lots of little disks per volumes. You know, it's just like, you know, the progenitors of today's modern storage subsystems, which are thousands of disks, right? All of them have the bits for the various bytes sprayed across them for maximum efficiency. And I said, I don't think any of that makes any difference, right? And we got into a discussion about it, and the two guys, they looked at me and scratched their heads and said, "What does this young guy know?" Right? But they did, you know, one guy did come back 2 days later at the welcome reception, or the reception that night, and said, "You know, I did some research on this, and you're absolutely right." Right?
Wow. So it opens up some conversation,
right? Because sometimes you just need a little bit of perspective, right?
Yeah.
And things change. And that's what happens here, right? Is that stuff that was true 20 years ago isn't true anymore.
Yeah.
And stuff that was true 1 year ago isn't true anymore.
Sure.
And so, and the you know, and the the world likes to perceive the mainframe as boring, stuffy, no innovation. But today, there's tons of innovation. A lot of the things that we see in the mainframe are, you know, they're brand new, really, you know, invention, right?
Yeah.
And some of it is innovations that we, you know, beg, borrow, and steal from other places. And that's good, right? You should take the best of both worlds, right? So if there's guys in Poughkeepsie doing great stuff, or guys at Dell doing great stuff, or guys for IBM on the West Coast doing great stuff, or guys at Broadcom doing great stuff, we should do that, right? And then, you know, on the other side of it, right, you think about things like DevOps, which had to be developed for the distributed system, because what a whale of a problem it is to roll software changes out to 1,000 or 10,000 servers, right? We don't have that problem, right?
Right.
You know, at most, right, most customers are well under 100 mainframe images, right? There are a couple who are beyond that, but rolling out changes to 100 doesn't compare at all to rolling out changes to thousands.
Right.
Right. So they had to develop DevOps, and that created all kinds of neat, opportunities for automation, neat opportunities to get people's fingers out of the pie, right? Because people's fingers in the pie is what tends to spoil the pie.
Yeah.
Because they don't tend to make the pie the same every time. Right?
Ain't that the
Not
truth?
exactly, or which I guess for your grandmother, probably a good thing, right? The
Right.
pie doesn't taste the same all the time, but not good if you're an enterprise software concern.
Right. Right.
And so, and so a lot of that stuff has been brought up to z/OS. And so the ability to, today, right, for somebody to be able to get onto VS Code or Eclipse and work on their COBOL program,
Yeah.
completely unthought of, right, 30 years ago, right? But that's the world that the distributed guys came to, and so that's the not that all the people who work on these other platforms are all that young either, right?
Sure.
Because Windows has been around a long time, right? Linux has been around a long time. Unix has been around even longer, right? So nothing here is really young anymore.
Yeah.
Right? But is it being renewed is the real question. And I assert that z/OS and all the stuff on the Z platform is just like just as much as Linux or the cloud, right?
Right.
It's just great to have sort of this forum where people can get together and discuss that stuff. And IBM can put their stuff up, and Broadcom can put their stuff up. And I'm looking around the room as they construct the trade show.
Yeah,
and
it's
all of the
marvelous.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And there's so much brain power here, so much intelligence, and a lot of wisdom. And people are bringing their stuff to the floor, right? And you can see it, right? Because a lot of these folks are here to get bought, right? By the bigger, we got some great technology. You should buy us and integrate it with yours. And that's, I think it's a great way for the ecosystem work. That's how it works for Microsoft, right? They don't make everything up. They buy the stuff that's good that other people do too. Same with Apple, right? A lot of that stuff, right? Remember that the first flashlight on the Apple iPhone was somebody's app that you had to spend $5 for, right?
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, but the Apple said, hey, you know what? That's a great idea. We're going to put you out of business and make it part of make it part of iOS, right? So sometimes it's not so good for the original developer, but innovation matters, and it occurs on our platform as well. And Share is just a great place to showcase it.
I love that. I love that. So can you Can you tell us, because a lot of the folks that watch the podcast, they are new to Z.
Yep.
And a lot of them too are new to technology, but they're in the space.
Sure.
Can you just share a little bit of like, how did you get started? Because now you are the president of Share. So I sit back and I'm like, how does that even happen? How does that work?
Well,
how
becoming
did
the
you do
president
it?
of Share, you get enough people to vote for you.
Well, I know how that part works, but how? Like, what's your origin story? Like your superhero story.
My superhero story. So I don't know that I'm any much of a real superhero, but so back when I was growing up, my father was in education in New York City. He was a teacher, vice principal, administrator in New York City.
Very cool.
They were beginning to get the first, I wouldn't call them personal computers, but take-home computers. Like, so the school, the schools are closed in the summertime.
Yeah.
So the administrators and some of the teachers were able to bring home some of the equipment, right? So my dad brought home a TI 99.4, Sinclair ZX80. I'm trying to think of what the other ones are. The Atari 800, right? The very early computers. And so, I was kind of a nerdy kid, good at math, and he would bring these things home, and I would play with them, and I learned how to program in BASIC. Then I went to high school, and in high school we had an Alpha microcomputer, which was used by the computing class and by the administration to do faculty scheduling and things like that.
Okay.
And so the computing class was able to get onto these machines. And in the closet, they had an old HP 2100A. I guess they called it a mini computer, right? It was about refrigerator size.
Yeah.
It had a rockin' 24K of memory, right? And the memory was those little cores, right? With the wires running through it.
Right.
And it had 3 ASR 33 teletypes, if you remember, like from the movies from the 60s and the 70s.
Get out of town.
We had 3 of those. Had an optical card reader and a tape punch. And I was the first freshman at my high school to ever be allowed to enroll in the computer class, but I had to go and prove to the teacher that I knew something about computing. So I was lucky enough to have kind of muddled my way through learning BASIC, which is what he was teaching. And so he said, all right, you can take the class because you could already do some of this stuff. Generally speaking, we don't let freshmen do this because they're not ready. They're like, it's 1978, how ready can people be? And it's a class. But apparently there was high demand for the class. But so I worked on this Alpha Micro machine, and then he told me about this machine in the closet. Which, remember the old AV carts?
Yeah.
From school, it was on an AV cart with all the equipment. And he said, if you want to put it back together, go ahead. So I had
say less
classes, right? I came down. I made friends with Mrs. Tossick, the math lab proctor person. And they let me put the thing together, and boy, when you plugged that thing in and turned it on, the lights went.
It would use that much power.
Oh yeah, it sucked in the power. And so she was going to night school at the local community college to get her teaching certificate.
Okay.
And so and I said, you're going to school at night for that. I checked the catalog, which came in the mail. Right, the entire school catalog came in the mail, and they had a class in Fortran and a class in COBOL.
Oh, the good stuff.
The good stuff. And so I learned how to do Fortran and COBOL at Mercer County Community College in New Jersey.
While you were in high school?
I was in high school.
Love it.
Right, so she was taking night classes, and I just lined up the classes I was taking with hers, and she drove me to night school. And I learned on an IBM 4341 running OS/VS or what's called DOS/VSE or VSE now. I learned how to do that coding on Key Punch. Right. You put the cards through the window, and there's some dude inside with a big beard and a pocket protector, and the green bar paper. Yeah, really. The green bar paper would come back in your folder, and you'd see if it worked or not. And if it didn't work, you went back, fixed the cue cards, and did it again. So that's kind of how I got into computing. And I went to college, and I was actually an engineering major, not a computer science major. But I worked odd jobs, contracting for a couple of financial firms. I learned how to do PL1. I had an Apple II computer at that point, and I had this crazy setup that hooked into all the card slots in the Apple computer to be able to do all the extra keys that are needed for 3270.
Okay.
And I lied. I knew Pascal from college, but they said, do you know PL1? I'm like, Sure. I know
Sure.
PL1 like the back of my hand.
Why not?
And so I was writing financial services projects with for 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵, a small company called 𝗧𝗶𝗰𝗵 American Express, right? Most of whom don't even exist anymore, right? 𝗧𝗶𝘀's gone, Lehman's gone, American Express goes on, and so I worked down. It was in downtown New York City near the Trade Center.
Wow.
So and then finished school, was looking at jobs. And this is 1986, so we're going back just before the fall of the Berlin Wall. But politically speaking, you knew it was coming, right? So I had 7 job offers from defense contractors and 1 job offer from IBM.
Wow.
Right, and I'm like talking to people, and our next door neighbor from when I was before in high school, he was an engineer. He worked at I forget it. It was one of the NCR.
Okay.
And he said, electrical engineering and computer science, the way of the future. So he was pretty prescient, pushed me in that direction. And I thought about it. I'm like, do I want to build ring laser gyros for missiles and guidance systems, or do I want to go to Poughkeepsie, New York, and program?
Right.
And I figured, this gig seemed a little bit more stable. And so I went to Poughkeepsie, and the guy who hired me was a guy named Ross Morey.
Wow.
So he was a relatively new manager at Poughkeepsie at the time, and he hired me into his group, and I spent the next 20 change years there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's the origin story.
And now we have you as the superhero that was hired by a superhero.
Yeah, I guess you could put it that way.
Amazing. That's awesome. And so then you
So I
came through with Cher.
Well, while I was at IBM, I came to Cher to speak about the mid '90s at IBM was not a great time.
Okay.
Right, there were a lot of changes in the company. To try to keep the story short, but the people who were building the company up to be $100 billion company by 1990 did not succeed at that. And so they got rid of the CEO, stepped down. They brought in Lou Gerstner. Lou Gerstner bought his 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵, right?
Okay.
And cut the company down to size. The way he did it, people can argue about, but some of it had to be done. Some people would argue he cut a lot of the things that should have been cut, and he probably cut some things that probably shouldn't have been cut. But that's the past. And so because a lot of people left mainframe development in Poughkeepsie and went down to Boca Raton to work on a little product called OS2. Right, it left a leadership vacuum in Poughkeepsie around.
Wow.
So I got thrust into a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have been thrust into had those people not left. Right, so opportunity.
These secret opportunities that just boom, here they are. Wow.
Right, so it was right in the middle of IBM's transition on the mainframe from big old water-cooled machines to little teeny air-cooled machines.
Yeah.
And so we had to be able to take lots of them, hook them together. So I got involved in the parallel 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵 project, and did a lot of work in the consoles component, a lot of work, basically rewrote the GRS component, not by myself, with a little bit of help.
Certainly.
And it got involved in a number of other things around that technology until I left IBM in 2007.
Amazing.
So I went to a company, so I'm going to gesture towards Broadcom, right? So Broadcom bought a company called 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗀. I was there for about 10 years. I served as their mainframe chief architect. We did a number of good things. I think we did a lot of stuff to push IBM in certain directions, certainly around software installation. We built the first graphical GUI software installer called Mainframe Software Manager, then Core Software Manager. And that, I think, had a lot to do with 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵 and how 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵 works today. There was some technical interchange between them. I left 𝗧𝗶𝗀𝗃 in 2017. I banged around a couple of other places, and then I joined on with Sirius, which is IBM's was at the time IBM's biggest mainframe reseller partner, and then we were bought by CDW a couple of years ago. I mean, I was at Sirius all of 2 months before they told me that CDW was buying us.
Wow.
So so I'm there now, and I work a lot. I'm sort of architect for how they have these on LinkedIn, you see it all the time, right? Do you need a fractional CTO or a fractional a fractional CMO? right? I'm kind of like a fractional architect for a bunch of small mainframe companies.
Yeah.
You know that, and what you find is that there's a whole lot of skills talk going on. I mean, you guys are probably knee deep in the skills issues, right?
Knee deep.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of places who they have not backfilled the skills,
Right.
and so they're so involved with keeping the lights on that they need some help, right? And so
Right.
my team at CDW, we give a lot of help, right? We got security experts, we've got DB2 experts, we got Kicks experts. I'm more of an overall systems expert, and we just come and say, hey, you know what? If you make these 4 or 5 changes, you can save yourself some bucks on software.
Love that.
Right? You'll improve your availability, right? And we do things like help people modernize their DevOps, or I mean, we even have a practice around just upgrading software, right?
Right.
Because they just don't have the skills or the time to do it. So, and then and that it just shows that kind of the back end, we do need to have lots more folks like you guys to come in and take up the slack.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's very easy to to make the excuse, I can't find it. Well, you need a little harder.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's all.
They're hiding. They're out there.
They're right. You guys are out there. I mean, and guys like Jeffrey Decker and Cameron Say, they're doing yeoman's work, right, to create the people to move on.
Yeah.
There's this whole, sort of this whole undercurrent of COBOL's not modern. Well, please tell me what modern means, right? But seriously, tell me what modern means.
What is that?
Right? I mean, if the actual compiler is being updated every so often, I think that's modern, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's running with COBOL from 1966 or 1956, right?
Right.
So it's yes, the code hasn't changed much in the last 30 or 40 years, but guess what? That's a testament to IBM and their ability to keep things running, and the customer not being able to make sure that these things keep on running, and the overall ecosystem around the COBOL getting better so that you don't have to make the changes, or that the changes that you have to make are pretty minimal. Right? Everybody talks about with Microsoft, you gotta upgrade Windows, right? And when you upgrade Windows, you have to throw away 30 applications and buy new ones, right? You don't have to do that on the mainframe.
Right.
Occasionally you do,
yeah,
right? Or you have to write a couple of lines of code to get things going. But
standardize a little bit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe modernize the app, right? Right. And really modernize means get with 2024, right?
For sure.
Right. So it's important that you kind of bring this stuff and make it and look at it with through the lens of, if you're going to look at distributed one way, you got to look at mainframe the other way, right?
Yeah.
Every couple of years, you got to throw away all your distributed machines, right?
Yeah.
You got to upgrade Windows everywhere. That's painful, right?
Painful.
You may have to all the package software that you had that doesn't run on the new version of Windows, you got to update all that.
That's right.
You got to convert all the data, right? You don't have to do that on the mainframe, and even when you do have to do it, it's not cataclysmic. So
right.
Which is really important.
Wow. And this is why we come to share, so that we can be able to hear this type of content. So
even in the early days, right? IBM was making changes that were painful, and the customers got together. Share today is much more around community and working together with everybody. Share was formed really to beat the pick your bodily stuff out of IBM, because IBM was not doing the right things. Right?
Oh wow!
They weren't, I would say that they were listening, but they weren't maybe not listening to all the right stuff, and they were under tremendous constraints. Right? This is prior to System 360.
Oh,
there were lots of different kinds of computers.
This was way back
in the 50s. Right?
Oh, I see.
Right? And so things like COBOL wasn't made by Share. But things like standardization on languages, standardization around how peripherals connect, right? Operating systems concepts, they're kind of piloted by Share and kind of beaten into IBM, right? And so over the years, right, the relationship has gone much more to a, hey, I'm your friend, you're my friend. We'll have some frank conversations about how things need to go, as opposed to, I'm going to go buy Burroughs or Sperry or somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure at the same time they were beating the crap out of Sperry and Univac and those guys, right?
Sure.
So it's IBM survived that period,
right,
by actually listening, right? And the fact that, I think that Share can take some credit for IBM being able to, continue with this platform for 60 years.
I love that. And you tell the story so well, and it just gets us all excited, you know.
Yeah.
So while
It is
I have,
exciting.
it is exciting. That's why we're here. While I still have you just a little bit, I want to find out. There's a lot of folks that don't know about this conference, which I think is, I don't know, like if you live under a rock or whatever. Yeah, like what's happening?
Yeah.
How can people get the individual membership?
Well, if you go to 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵 and click on become a member, all the information's there. And this is one of the things also that we're trying to modernize the organization a little bit, right? That things have changed in the working world from the 50s and the 60s, where you kind of went to work for one company and you stuck it out for 40, 45 years.
Sure.
And you got your grandfather clock or your Timex or whatever, your Rolex, I guess. And you went off into the sunset. People now, there's a lot of people who work in the IT industry, much more gig oriented.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're not going to be attached to us. They're not going to be attached to a company as a share member. So, we think the idea of kind of portability, right? Owning your own membership is a good idea.
Oh, that's good.
And so, for a couple $100 a year, it's what you're paying for Netflix, certainly a whole lot less than what you're paying for Starbucks at the end of the day. You can be a member of Share, get all these benefits, and we actually give individual members more benefits than people who are employees of corporate members.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what about for students? Because I saw so many, there's a lot of students. Even Dr. Say's student is here. So how does that work? How do they get on?
All you got to do is go go register as a member, say you're a student. You got to have to prove that you're
you must be a student.
You must be a student.
Don't just say you're a student.
We're going to ask, we'll ask for identification. It's a little bit tighter than than certain things, but we'll and you'll get all the benefits of a regular individual member, except for voting rights. Right? We have we have a number of things that you can vote for. One of the things that we do is take requirements against the products of all the things in here,
right?
And so from a prioritization perspective, all of the members get to vote on this is important, this is not important. Students don't get that right. But you get the access to all the content. And for us, it's just a way to get students in so that when they do find a job, or they can use the connections that they make through Share to find a job.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And get them into the community as early as possible.
That's awesome. And I think that's such a valuable experience for them, just like for all of us that are within the industry.
Yeah.
Now, can I show you all have this brand new tie-dye shirt?
Yes, the Share.
The Share
Orlando 2024 T-shirt is tie-dye purple.
It's tie-dye purple. It is so, and with all of the sponsor and partners on the back, I thought
we have tremendous support from our partners and sponsors. So.
I mean, PK Broadcom, IBM, and so many others. You know what, Scott? I'm just, like I said, I'm so happy to have you today. Do you have anything else that you can any last words that you'd like to tell us?
I think the most important thing is, if you can't come to Share, be an individual member, use our digital assets, right?
Absolutely.
Everything that we do at the conference is available there. We have the ability to get mentoring through that, right? I mean, I know that it's kind of expensive and not every company can send everybody that, even if you have a department of only 5 or 6 people on the mainframe, that's a little heavy to send everybody.
Right.
But join as an individual member, and we can get you hooked up with people to help you mentor. If you got any questions, right? And we have tons of content out there that's available on demand, right? Not just twice a year.
Right.
And get involved. If you are a member and coming, please volunteer, right?
Absolutely.
We've got lots of volunteer opportunities, both on the in the conference area and on the digital side, because again, right, the best thing about it is, if you can be of service and give back, then those, pay it forward. Those people will be able to pay it forward to the next generation.
Be a Share volunteer.
There you go. It costs nothing.
It costs nothing to be good to other people.
And it doesn't hurt.
Exactly.
And you have the adoration of thousands, maybe hundreds.
It feels good in the heart.
It does. It does.
You know what?
And I mean, you don't have to be a grandiose volunteer.
Yeah.
Right. just do a couple things, right? There's lots of room for lots of people to do stuff, and the more volunteers we have, the less work everybody has to do.
Right.
So,
many hands make the workload light.
that's right.
Well,
Exactly.
thank you so much, Scott.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed this.
I did too, and we certainly do appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and close out.
Okay.
And I appreciate you all for hanging out with us. I hope that you had a wonderful time, and you need to come to share. So the next one is in Kansas City, right?
Kansas City in August.
In August.
Registration will open in a few weeks.
Yay!
Yay! We got to finish this one first.
We've got to finish this one first, and it just started, and we're having too much fun. So we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.